Good evening, everyone. It is 5:06, and I want to welcome everyone to tonight's regularly scheduled meeting of the Temple City Council. Please rise as Mayor Pro Tem Judy Morales leads us in the invocation, which will then be followed by our pledge, which will be led by City Secretary Jana Llewellyn.
Join me, please. Heavenly Father, we pray for worldly function and city leaders as you give us the responsibility to watch and guide over the cities we serve. Grant us the wisdom and help us to remember that it is you who gives wisdom because your mouth comes from knowledge and understanding. And we thank you, Lord, for granting wisdom for all of our leaders. We pray for your grace over our city leaders, our mayor, our city council, city staff, our police, our fire, our first responders, and all those who work tirelessly for others. We recognize that your grace is sufficient to keep them through your power, that they will make them strong and will not grow weary of doing good, but in due season, we will reap all the things we strive for, because your word says that you will give us the desires of our hearts. Lord, grant us the desires for the city you have made us ruler over, and we pray that you will help us not to give up. Father, we pray today for all people of all nations. During this week, we celebrate freedom, and on Juneteenth, we celebrate triumphantly with all people of goodwill, that we might walk arm in arm towards justice for all, and that we may never tire of ensuring a flourishing life for all people, but especially those brothers and sisters whose growth has been stifled by the trauma of being enslaved. Father, we know and have seen your goodness, and because of it, we cling and we hope that unity and liberation for all are within our grasp. Continue to show us your goodness, that we may have the strength to advance your kingdom with humility and grace. And Father, we love you, and it's because of your love for us that we stand strong with faith and conviction. Let us to continue to unite and share our blessings and love with all our neighbors as you have shared with us. In Jesus' name we pray. Amen.
Allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both. Now move on to the time on our agenda for public comments. I don't believe that we've had anyone sign up to speak tonight, so we'll move right on to special recognition, which the first one is to recognize July 2022 is Parks and Recreation Month in the city of Temple. So Kevin, if you'll bring your group forward, I think we have a proclamation for you.
That answers your question.
Whoa.
Kevin, who's in charge while y'all are all here?
That's right. Who's fixing up the park? A minute ago, Judy said, "Why are all these people here?" That makes me nervous. So in a minute, half the room will be empty. Are we settled?
We are set.
All right. Very good. If I may, this proclamation from the Office of the Mayor of the City of Temple, it reads, whereas Parks and Recreation programs are an integral part of communities throughout this country, including Temple, Texas. Whereas our Parks and Recreation are vitally important to establishing and maintaining the quality of life in our communities, ensuring the health of all citizens, and contributing to the economic and environmental well-being of a community and region. Whereas Parks and Recreation programs build healthy, active communities that aid in the prevention of chronic disease, provide therapeutic recreation services for all of those who are mentally or physically disabled, and also improve the mental and emotional health of all citizens. Whereas Parks and Recreation programs increase the community's economic prosperity through an increased property values, expansion of local property tax base, increased tourism, and the attraction and retention of businesses and crime reduction. Whereas Parks and Recreation areas are fundamental to the environmental well-being of our community. Whereas parks and natural recreation areas improve water quality, protect groundwater, prevent flooding, improve the quality of the air we breathe, provide vegetative buffers to development, and provide habitat for wildlife. Whereas our parks and natural recreation areas ensure the ecological beauty of our community and provide a place for children and adults to connect with nature and to recreate outdoors. And whereas the U.S. House of Representatives has designated July as Parks and Recreation Month, and the City of Temple recognizes the benefits derived from parks and recreation resources. Now therefore, I, Timothy A. Davis, Mayor of the City of Temple, Texas, do hereby proclaim the month of July 2022 as Parks and Recreation Month in the City of Temple, and I encourage all citizens to get out and enjoy our local parks and recreation areas within the City of Temple. In testimony whereof, I witness my hand on the seal of the City of Temple, Texas on this 16th day of June, 2022. Congratulations. Thank you all so much. Take it away.
With honor. So, Mayor, this is going to come as a surprise to you, but, I've gotten a little older and I've gotten a little wiser. So when I've come here before, there are certain people in our department, I've said, they're the glue, that's usually our admin, but I was wrong. They're all glue for our organization. And I will tell you, they're not just coworkers. To me, they're a family. We spend more time at work than usually with our, at home with our pets or our spouse. So this is my family, which also means it's really, your family. And to save some time and also keep my mind sharp, I'm actually going to introduce everybody and the area they cover. And then I'll tell you just about a few things that's going on in July. So at the end, we've got Donald. He's one of our parks foremen. Chuck Graham, he's assistant director, Sunday in aquatics. We got Angela at the convention center. We've got Stephen at the golf course. Matthew at the golf course. Stephen at the golf course. Kim in parks. We've got Alex at the summit. Odell's at Wilson. We've got Miranda at Wilson. We've got Angela at the museum, Railroad Museum. Holly, and we got Amanda and Chelsea in special events. Got Marissa at Simmons Community Center. Donna at our main office. Mike, he's one of our Mikes. I don't know how many we have. He's one of our recreation service director. We've got Jeff at the golf course. Gary's another one of our parks foremen, and Lee is a parks services director. Sorry. Parks and Recreation Month, July. And this was a little bit different this year. Normally we come to the first one in July, but by then, things are well underway. And so the staff, they're smarter than I am, said, hey, we need to take this in June, and which is, a great idea. So I hope that, you go to our website and you can find activities. There are some free activities this year, popsicles in the park, ice cream in the park. Certain days you can go to the swimming pools for free. So we're trying to just encourage people to get out. The big one that's coming up is 4th of July. Who doesn't like 4th of July? On 4th of July. So 4 to 10 activities start. And my special event team will tell me if I'm wrong here, but the concert, music, Brody Lane kicks it off at 7 o'clock with fireworks starting around 9:30, about a 25-minute show. So I would encourage you to get out, bring your sunscreen, your hat and everything. But we just thank you for council support. And we love this city. I love this staff, and that's what makes this city great. So thank you, Mayor.
You bet. Thank y'all very much.
On the back. Oh, it's in the back.
You're short. Yeah, totally.
You're in the back.
Oh, yeah. I know. Short slide.
Gotta go to the TV to take this
I think you're supposed to be more mature.
Oh, but you got the wrong guy here.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Oh, so you didn't touch. Huh? I'll give you a call.
Kevin, you never did answer my trivia question from last year about Temple Parks.
Yes, sir.
So The oldest lake
Oh, my goodness.
in the city limits of Temple.
Yes,
Where is it and what's its name?
it's out at the golf course.
Okay,
It is Polk. I think that same answer I gave last year, you said that's not the correct full name though.
no, that was the correct name. I think that you sandbagged on me last year and I gave you a year to research it. You're right.
Yeah, I just told somebody, I said, previously I could challenge the mayor on some trivia, but I quickly learned I would lose, so I don't do that. So I'll be.
Well, earlier in the week, I was trying to come up with a trivia question and then I got bored with it and forgot about it. So I'll get you next year.
Yes, you will.
Okay. Okay, very good. Item 4 is to recognize the Temple Public Library as receiving the Texas Municipal Library Directors Association Award. Ms. Smith and Ms. McAdams.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. This year, the Temple Public Library was awarded the Achievement of Excellence in Libraries Award from the Texas Municipal Library Directors Association. This award is presented to libraries that provide programming to underserved populations, increase and enhance services to the public, especially in digital inclusion, provide literacy support for all ages, and establish professional staff training for all members of their team. In 2021, of all the 565 public library systems in Texas, 59 libraries earned the TMLDA Achievement of Excellence Award. This year, the Temple Public Library was one of the few libraries out of so many in the state that received this recognition of their excellent service to the residents of the city of Temple. So today, I am happy to present Natalie McAdams, our library director, with the Achievement of Excellence in Libraries Award.
There you are.
Oh, okay.
You look great. You're still smiling.
I knew you didn't want me to move closer to the mic.
Thank you, Ms. McAdams, for all your good work there at the library. You hit the ground running for sure. Item 5 is to recognize Charles Green for his life-saving actions, Chiefs Randalls and Reynolds.
So thank you, Mayor. Appreciate you and the council allowing us time to do this and recognize Mr. Green. You got to stand in between us. So, he's very shy. Didn't want to be here and do this. He's been really great about accepting this recognition for his actions. So just kind of a brief overview of what happened back on April 30th of this year. Mr. Green was driving by an accident that happened here in Temple. Vehicle lost control, ran into a utility pole, and then proceeded to catch on fire. Before fire and EMS could get there, Mr. Green stopped his motorcycle, got out, helped the 2 occupants out of the vehicle to safety, and without a doubt kept them from being seriously injured. And so we just wanted to take a moment tonight, recognize his caring for his fellow citizens and present him with an award. And so I'll just read it real quickly. So Temple Fire Rescue and Temple PD recognize Charles Green for courageous life-saving actions performed on Saturday, April 30th, 2022. Thank you for your selfless dedication to the citizens of Temple. So, and again, we just appreciate it. So Chief Reynolds, you want to say something?
Yeah, so it's quite remarkable what he did. He pulled the folks out of the vehicle while it's on fire. Numerous other vehicles had driven by the scene, but really quite remarkable that we had a citizen uniquely poised and placed there in order to take action and assist in saving lives. So kudos, man. Great job. Thank you for it.
You're good.
So do you want to recognize any of your family members?
Appreciate my mom, my dad coming out, my son Jax, my bosses and co-workers and staff of Morco. I appreciate y'all coming out supporting me. It means a lot. And thank y'all.
Okay.
you so much, Mr. Green. That's amazing. Moving on to item 6 is a public hearing to consider adopting a resolution approving the mobility master plan for the city of Temple. Mr. Deckman.
Good evening, Mayor, council members. This day's been a long time coming. I'm glad to be here. We've been working on this thing for 18 months. Sometimes it seems like it's been longer. Sometimes it seems like it was just yesterday, but it's been a year and a half of work by a lot of folks, both the city staff, the consultant, and the public that have reached out to us. So I'm going to start this out by saying thank you to everyone who's participated in this plan. Could not have done it without you. We've had a lot of public engagement. We've had public meetings, workshops. We've met with the development community. We've met with neighborhood groups and citizens. Again, a community effort for a community plan. We went through a lot of system assessment and analysis, all the brainy, nerdy math, computer simulations that you could shake a stick at. We've done to figure out what's happening, where are we going? Not to make a transportation related pun, but where are we going? Then we wrapped all that public involvement, all that analysis up into the draft chapters that have been published online, and that website will stay up for the near future for your review, for your input. And we're here tonight with that thumbs up, plan adoption. And then there's one more step, the implementation. So when we adopt this plan tonight, there's still more work that's going to start as a result of this plan. So it's taking the recommendations forward and building what we think needs to be built to keep people moving forward. So these are the goals and the objectives for the plan. Safety first. We just saw a commitment to safety that I can't say enough about. The roads can be dangerous, and it's on all of us to try to make them safer. Community driven, I mentioned that. The number of people that came out to talk about transportation warmed my little heart, because transportation planning can be very nerdy and policy driven. And when folks from the public come out and spend an hour of their evenings talking about, giving their feedback, identifying solutions, that's awesome. That's a beautiful thing. We want to maintain and sustain. So we're not just building new roads, we're maintaining what we have. So that is a key goal. And then the choices, the connections, that not everyone drives to work in a car by themselves. There's multiple ways that everyone gets around. Could be the bus, could be a bicycle. You might be close enough to walk to where you work. We're trying to address all of those needs. So I'm going to go through briefly and just give you an overview of some of the analysis that we went through to get where we're at. So we looked at the demographics. We know we're a growing city. Let's quantify that and let's forecast it and try to anticipate where those needs are going to be. We know there's some problems with congestion. There's some roads that have more traffic than they can handle. There's roads that are handling the traffic well. Again, we've got some maps, we've got some analysis that quantify that, steer us to where the work needs to be done. We've looked at safety. So this is one example. This is what you call a heat map that shows you where there's clusters of crashes, that there's more crashes on those hot spots than there probably should be. If we know there's a problem there, we can do something about it. This is the angled collisions, but we've got heat maps for speeding. We've got heat maps that are pedestrian involved. So there's multiple ways that you can slice this data, and each of them is going to result in a different solution. We've looked at the intersections. A lot of your safety issues tied to the intersections, a lot of your congestion ties to being held up at the intersection, whether that's the signal timing, whether it's the configuration, there's just not enough lanes or it needs a turn lane. How can we move that traffic through that intersection? And not only just identify them, but if we make an improvement, where does it have the benefit? Is it in the morning or is it in the evening? Is it a significant improvement or is it maybe only a moderate improvement? And if that's a moderate improvement by changing the signal, maybe it's a different problem, maybe it's a different solution, but we've looked at that and started to drive towards an answer. We've looked at bicycle and pedestrians because not everyone gets around in a car. And this is a map of the recommended bicycle network. And you see there's a number of layers on there. We looked at school zones. We looked at existing sidewalks, existing recommendations from our Parks and Trails Master Plan. Where do people need to go? How can we get them there? And if this provides an option to get people out of the cars, then that's a congestion solution as well. It's also a health and wellness thing. We all could use a little bit more exercise. We looked at transit. And what this map's showing you is that there may be a different answer than the bus system that we've all known for years, which is the bus goes on a defined route. Those blue and yellow blocks you see on the map, that's a potential solution called micromobility. It's kind of an on-demand Uber kind of a model where the riders can request a ride. The bus will come pick them up, carry them to their destination within that defined area. It may connect them with that fixed route transit service. So then you get the pick them up service, connects you to the traditional bus route. So we're trying to find innovative ways to give folks an option, specifically that yellow area, to get to work. That's the industrial park. We heard from a lot of folks, they need to get to their jobs in the industrial park. This may form the basis of one of those solutions. So that'll be a recommendation coming out of the mobility plan. Oops, a little bit heavy on the clicker. So the last three chapters are where we really get into the meat of the recommendations. We've got a couple targeted areas that we know need improvement. So once you target that area, then you start developing a solution. Those two images up there came from two different sources, but they tie together. The Bel Air neighborhood plan looked at realigning Shell Avenue. One of our safety analysis has pointed out the intersection of Shell and East Young, just a little bit east of that area. It may make sense for those two to be companion projects, but we're coming from different sources and we're driving towards a similar answer. So pulling from all these different plans and all these different sources usually means you're coming up with a good solution because you're looking at it from multiple angles. And anybody that travels in West Temple knows the old Waco West Adams intersection. It's one of the most highly traveled intersections in Temple. Could be better. And I'll leave it at that. Chapter 10 has a lot of recommendations. Those are just two of them. And the numbers are on the bottom there. How many intersections, roadways, sidewalks, and bicycle facilities? That's not the final number. That number may change as we grow, as we identify new needs. Had a conversation today with a gentleman about a motorcycle accident that happened near his neighborhood. That intersection doesn't currently have a signal. Maybe it needs one. So as we have these conversations, as we go through these processes, these solutions are going to grow as the city grows. So how do we implement the plan? The first thing we do is for the guy presenting to take a drink of water. We keep a list of projects, and there's two key recommendations in that project delivery is one, their overall pipeline of projects, but within that have a specifically identified set of safety projects. Cannot stress enough how important safety is to me. You can't build it if you can't pay for it. So we have to keep working with our budget process. We've got a number of ways to pay for those projects, whether that's city budget or grants from external agencies. It could be state or federal money. One of the recommendations is to have staff specifically directed to go find that money. The parlance is go shake the tree. I like shaking the tree. Maybe bragging, but I'm kind of good at it. We've got some safety money coming for a crosswalk project out here right on Central Avenue. And that's in response to observed pedestrian traffic that wasn't there a couple of years ago. But we've had so much growth downtown, new businesses, new people coming down here, that we foresee that there might have been a safety issue at South First Street crossing from this parking lot to go down that street. We went and found the money. We got the money. So we're going to keep shaking the tree. Look at public and private partnerships. There may be ways in the industrial park, and this is something that they've talked with the folks at the transit provider, the HOP, the Hill Country Transit District. Is there ways for the private industry to partner with government to fund the needed improvements. What that looks like is going to be different for each solution. But we have those conversations so we can start moving in that direction. Out of this plan, we'll have a number of data sets that are going to help us make those decisions. Because the reality is, I showed you those numbers of recommended intersections. We don't have enough money right now to build all those. So there's got to be a prioritization and decision-making process. So if you've got a quality process, if you've got quality data to look at, where's the school zone that doesn't have an existing sidewalk, but also showed up on that safety hotspot map that there have been pedestrians struck there, that prioritizes that project over maybe a different neighborhood. So we have that data to support that decision-making process. And then our partnerships with different organizations, TxDOT, KTMPO are a big one. TABA's the Area Builders Association. If we have recommendations of what we want the streets to look like and they're building out the neighborhoods, then we're working together with them to build that vision together. The Economic Development Corporation, bringing new businesses in, that brings in new traffic, freight, employees, could be tourism. We can partner with them, work with them as it comes in, be able to anticipate and respond to the changes in the traffic pattern. And one of the recommendations, as I was reading through chapter 11, as we were writing out the different steps, jumped out at me, well, we're doing this already. So it's telling us that we're doing a good job. There was a recommendation to have cross-department meetings to review the projects. We already do that. We have a CIP process where all the departments go through and brief drainage projects, parks projects, renovation projects, mobility projects, neighborhood plan projects, and find where those overlaps are. Find where those priorities line up and reinforce each other. So that's a recommendation. We're already doing it. So we're doing a good job. We have to keep maintaining what we have. We did a pavement condition index report 2 years ago that made recommendations for how much of your roads do you want to maintain in what condition. If you're okay with 70% of the roads being in fair condition, you can get by with this much money. If you want 80% of your roads to be in better condition, you're going to spend a little bit more money. And this is what that looks like. Also recommend looking at the sidewalk condition and where we have areas with substandard sidewalks or no sidewalks at all. So quantify that and again, steer us towards where the needs are and where that taxpayer money might be well spent. Speaking of taxpayer money, we've got 3 slides of CIP recommended projects. What I'll start by saying is that this is a recommendation. This is not the final answer to the CIP. This is a recommendation out of this plan of what might be pushed into the budget process based on those shared priorities and those conversations. A few things that are coming, potential future I-14 that currently ends in Belton may come through Temple and connect to the other highway section that goes out towards Rogers. Where can we designate I-14? How does that ramp? How do those flyovers and connections look like? We're going to be involved in that process. So we're going to budget money to be part of that process. We've got the outer loop. There's a portion to the north and to the south that are under construction. There's one section to the south that still remains to be completed. So we've got money recommended in the budget, and that's carried over from the existing CIP. We're holding that recommendation as part of this plan. We've got a number of neighborhood projects that came out of the neighborhood process. So we are not reinventing the wheel. We're leveraging what the City of Temple is already doing, hearing from those neighborhoods where their needs are, what they want, and incorporating that into the recommendation. So there's a sidewalk and a new roadway along Henderson Street and 14th Street to connect that part of East Temple north-south. We've got the Georgetown Railroad Trail in there twice. The existing phase that's funded through KTMPO that goes from South 5th Street to South 31st Street, and a future phase to go from 31st Street to the historic MKT bridge that's on the Leon River. That'll be our end of the trail that ties in with Belton. We've been talking with them about what they're going to do on their side. And the vision there is a trail network that goes from Temple clear to Belton. You can go halfway across the county and stay on that trail. We can do that. Jason's going to do a happy dance. You'll see it. That's why it's in the plan. There's some more sidewalks in East Temple, downtown, the maintenance that I mentioned. One of the things that we looked at was signals, that the need for better timing. We've heard that both on the data side and from the public, to have better timed traffic signals so that traffic and those cars keep moving. We're recommending the line item to hold that line, to keep doing that work and see if we can't do that better. New technology, better computer modeling and networking between those signals so that they're all working together. As well as the pavement preservation, that's that reconstruction, maintaining your roads at 70 or 80%, to have that recommended line item. We did a video to promote the plan. And one of the comments was, you should stop building new stuff. You can't fix the stuff you have. We've got a line item for that. We have been fixing stuff we have. Maybe that person's perception was we need to do a better job. They might be right, but it's on us to make sure we're spending that money responsibly and not letting our roads go to pot. So we've got a couple of complete streets recommendations. And a complete street is a road that lets all users, whether it's vehicles, pedestrians, or bicyclists. And we asked the consultant to look at, are there streets where there's more pavements and more lanes that are needed? Could we do something else? South Martin Luther King Jr. Drive came up with as a recommendation that maybe there's some additional pedestrian bike lane improvements that could go on that road. So that's in the CIP as a recommendation. There's a line item to continue looking at safe routes to school. So there's specific federal money available. And this recommendation, this budget item, charges us to keep chasing that money and making that a priority for the children going to the schools in the neighborhoods. So before I read this slide, I'm going to say two things, and I'm going to take another drink of water. This week I had two different conversations. One was a gentleman in Salado who emailed me, say, hey, I looked at your plan online and you got a typo on page 153. Thank you, we'll fix that. What that tells me, people outside Temple are watching what we're doing. They're paying attention to this plan, which should tell you that Temple is a regional powerhouse. People are paying attention to what we do. So this city is a leader in the region. And I had another conversation with a friend that works at a different city and said, man, I was looking at that mobility plan. We want to do that. Well, we started it. So if you didn't know Temple was a leader, you know now. And I'm not saying this because all my bosses are in the room and I'm trying to get a raise. I mean it. I'm proud to work for the city. And with that being said, staff recommends adoption of the mobility master plan. That being said, I will stand by if there's any questions or discussion.
Thank you, Mr. Deckman. And I've told this group before, I've had that regional meeting with mayors, and I get the same question just about every meeting is, what's Temple doing and how are you doing it? So you're right. We are leading the way, and I'm proud of that. Council, any comments or discussion for Mr. Deckman?
Other than to say how much we appreciate your efforts and your staff's efforts. Thank you very much.
Thank you, sir.
Great job.
Thank you.
Very good. Then at this time, I'll open the public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this matter may do so. I ask you step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the platform. Mr. Lytle, go ahead.
Name is Alan Lytle. I live at 504 Paseo del Plata here in Temple. Council, Mayor, sir. Great plan. I love it. Just a few observed comments. The city of Waco, when they started their great downtown revitalization, thought it was wise to close off streets and make them for just pedestrians. Now those streets are back open to traffic. So let's not make that same mistake and try to close down Central or the other streets and make them pedestrian traffic only. The other thing is, and I appreciate that y'all did the survey of all the streets and which ones needed to be fixed. Unfortunately, in 21, we had a few days of ice and it damaged a lot more streets. So we need to probably do that analysis more often. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Anyone else? No one on the platform? Okay. If there's no further discussion, I will close the public hearing. Councilors, is there any other comments before we move on to a vote? Okay. All right, very good. Then I will entertain a motion on item number 6.
Mayor, I make a motion that we approve the mobility master plan.
Very good. We have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. We have a second by Councilmember Williams. Council, if you would please cast your vote on the platform. Item 6 passes 4 votes to 0. Moving on to the consent agenda. All items that are listed on the consent agenda are to be considered routine by the city council and may be enacted in one motion. If discussion is desired by the council, any item may be removed from the consent agenda for special discussion. Council, we didn't name anything during workshop. Are we still okay with moving on with the full consent? Okay, very good. Then council, I'll entertain a motion on items 7A through 7Q.
Mayor, I make a motion to approve the consent agenda, items 7A through 7Q.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Council, please cast your vote. Consent agenda passes 4 votes to 0. Moving on is to consider adopting a resolution approving, Moving on to item 8 is the first reading and a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing a rezoning from general retail to commercial districts to a planned development commercial with a development or site plan on 3.849 plus or minus acres in the city of Temple, Bell County, Texas, addressed as 906 North 31st Street.
All right, good evening, Mayor and Council. And just to orient you to the site that we're talking about here, you can see on the left that it is on the west side of 31st Street, approaching the Nugent intersection. And so just north of the high school. And as was mentioned, this is a 3.8 acre site for proposed warehouse office. That would include some outdoor storage to the rear. And so it's 3 different buildings, about 11,000 square feet for each. 90% of each of those would be for the warehouse, and then about 10% for office. And because of its location, strategic location along the 31st Street corridor, near the high school, near the reinvestment zone and improvements there, we've worked with the applicant to do a planned development district rather than just straight commercial base rezoning. And so, of course, the site plan that we'll show you in a second would be binding. And so here you can see, and this is turned 90 degrees to the east. So you've got north on the right, and you can see the 3 buildings and storage to the rear, be screened with fencing and landscaping in the front, which would exceed the 5% minimum that's required by code, and also a sidewalk that eventually will have that sidewalk connectivity between Nugent and the other improvements near the high school. And so on the left, you can see this is an example of what the applicant has built before. And so what is proposed would be similar to this. These are metal buildings, but with a stone or masonry base. He has also agreed to add some structural awnings, windows, and doors, just to provide a little bit more articulation. And then on the right, you can see calculations related to the landscaping. And as I mentioned, they are going to exceed the minimum requirements. So 11% as opposed to 5% that is required by code. Oh, that wrong button. And so looking at our comprehensive plan, which identifies this part of the corridor as regional commercial. And I think it's important to point out that when you read that description, it talks about higher quality development standards and landscaping. And so we've worked with the applicant to try to improve that part of the corridor. And so you can see what the site looks like here. And to the north, there's a roofing company. To the south, you have the Bell County Health Department. And to the east, you have Temple Stormore, and then you have a variety of TISD facilities. And then on the backside, what is actually fronting on General Bruce, you can see you've got a couple motels and a church. And so 17 notices were sent out to property owners within 200 feet. 3 were sent to us in favor, and that includes 1 from the applicant and none in opposition. And staff recommends approval with the following conditions, and I'll just go over some of the highlights, which would include the landscaping, parking, and exterior building materials and articulation that we showed before, substantial compliance with that. The outdoor storage would be incidental to the warehouse and to the rear as shown on the site plan. And then lastly, for providing that 6-foot sidewalk along 31st Street. And I'm happy to answer any questions, and the applicant and his engineer and broker are here as well.
Thanks, sir. Council, any questions for Mr. Chandler?
Mr. Chandler, you talked about, excuse me, storage behind the buildings.
Yes, sir.
Will that be screened with some fencing to the property line?
Yes, screened with fencing. Yes, what as shown on the plan, it's wooden fencing, privacy screening.
Thank you.
Mayor, Mr. Chandler, I had,
Yes, ma'am.
thank you, Wendell, because I had a similar question. This is not the most beautiful area, but our goal is to beautify it as we go along, and we're grateful for the applicant working with you to do the PD. The screening is, you're saying, is wooden. Is that part of the plat that is guaranteed, so to speak?
Yes, ma'am. As on the site plan, that would be considered substantial compliance with the site
Good.
plan, the screening part. But it helps to get your input just to
Yeah,
make
this
sure
is-
that
it's-
we're on the same page.
Again, this is going to help the area beautify, but we've put so much effort into TISD and the roundabout, et cetera. We want to continue that process. So thank you very much, Mr. Applicant.
And also just want to point out, since we're showing the landscaping here in the bottom of the page, it'll include street trees as
Yes.
well. And so that'll
Yes,
help.
it's a good idea. Thank you.
Chandler, regarding the fencing,
Yes, ma'am.
there might be considered other type of material other than wooden. That would be great, because wooden does not last very long,
Sure.
and it would take away the beauty and all the exterior looking of that area, I would think.
Sure. And if maintenance is a concern too,
Yes.
then certainly, that can be reiterated as part of the condition, but I don't know if the applicants would like to comment, and if so, then please come up to the podium and state your name and address.
Council, anything else for Mr. Chandler?
Council, Will Cisco with Turley Associates at 301 North 3rd Street. I couldn't even remember, Brian, maybe you can, do we identify as a particular material? Do the conditions identify a particular material?
No, it's just screening, so
Yeah,
that's
I would just point out, I understand your concern with the wood fencing. I think what I would point out is that if there are materials stored back there, there will also be a security factor to the fencing. So I think they'll, the fence, whatever type of material fence goes back there will be maintained in good condition, just because if there are materials stored in the back, they're going to need to be secure. So I don't foresee a situation where you've got a wood fence falling down, because some of those materials will find a way to walk off if that's the case. And then the other thing I want to point out is that we've sort of strategically tucked those available outdoor storage areas behind the buildings. And so from the street view, in reality, you might not even see the fencing there. If you can see on the, right behind building 1, 2, and 3, there's some available outdoor storage, and then all the way back in the rear. And so, truthfully, we feel like with the trees on the front and the sides, the fencing, if it is wood fencing, we feel it's not like right along a street, where we sort of typically you drive through neighborhoods and you see the fence right along the street and it's falling down. We don't have that situation here. So I think we'd prefer to, we feel like that's probably the most likely scenario is a wood fence. So with council's approval, I think we'd probably prefer to stick with that. Anything else?
Could it be chain link? Would that be in compliance?
It wouldn't.
Not for screening.
No, not for screening.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm confused. I thought the backside is on General Bruce Drive.
No, ma'am.
Can you
There's
show us?
buildings between them.
Yeah, so you can see it's actually, there's actually
Further
right of
away.
way. And I forget, Christina
Yeah,
would
no, I
would know the
understand.
street, but there's city right of way behind it. And so there's actually a built-in buffer between the properties, those motels and the church that are facing General Bruce. And then we have city right of way behind it. But yeah, so it would not be visible from the interstate.
Right. I'm sorry, I had somehow got that in my mind.
Mr. Chandler, would you go back to your list of, excuse me, requirements?
Sure.
You really don't say anything about, you say fencing screening shall comply with the UDC. Yeah, I trust you, knowing the sense of the council. We give you the authority to work with the applicant, and let's make sure it's done right.
Okay.
I'm comfortable with that without trying to micromanage it from up here.
Okay.
But I think you've got the sense of the council. This area is going to go through some redevelopment, and this is sort of setting an example of what it could be and should be. And I think this is the way to do it.
I understand, cost and all, but I still think we need to consider it's going to be on 31st Street, and there's going to be a lot of traffic through there just as well. So I think the fencing sets the tone of the environment around that area. So I would appreciate looking at other options that might be possible that would not be that expensive. Thank you.
Sounds good.
So to answer my question, yes or no on is chain link allowed?
Chain
No.
link is allowed in commercial, but for this
this
purpose and the site plan, since screening is the.
Chain link is not considered
Yeah,
screening, it's just fencing.
Absolutely.
Okay.
I mean, it's good for security, but not for the screening part of it.
Okay.
So we would work with them to do something other than chain link. And
Well, many times we talk about shrubbery as being screening,
Mhm.
right?
Right.
So I
Yeah.
think what council's getting at is no chain link.
Right.
And at least a wooden fence.
Yes.
Yeah, oh, yeah, at least a wooden fence. Yeah. Okay. Very good.
Okay.
Council, anything else for Mr. Chandler? All right, item 8 is subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak on this item may do so. We ask that you step to the podium, state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the platform. Mr. Lytle, you're on the edge of your seat there.
Alan Lytle, 504 Paseo del Plata here in Temple. Sorry, the concern that's been brought up about Ms. Morales. This is a warehouse, so I assume some rather large trucks will be going down 31st Street past the high school. And I don't know if a traffic study had been done to see what that's going to do to our students coming and leaving from school. Thank you.
Thank you.
If I may address Mr. Lytle, these are small office warehouses. They would typically be plumbers and electricians, so with trucks, but not 18-wheelers. And so that it's a different scale. Good question, but no 18-wheelers likely. And I guess Mr. Fisk or yeah, I don't know if you'd like to address what the type of users, yeah, and just the scale of the trucks, but typically smaller trucks.
Scott Motzinger, 506 North Cliff Drive. There will be some 18-wheelers delivering, plumbers have supplies. So there may be some, but I kind of envision those probably doing the Nugent route. It's going to be a whole lot easier access for those. So they'll probably be going north in that direction and going south. So, but yeah, majority would be a small repair trucks and things like that. So hopefully that answers your question. Do you have any other questions? Okay.
So, assuming those are large trucks, you're still going to come in on 31st. There's not going to be like alley access to be able to get into the storage yard.
No, it'll come straight off on the first.
All right. Yep. Okay. Makes sense. Thank you. On the platform. All right. At this time, if there's no one else, I'll close the public hearing and entertain a motion on item 8.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve item 8 as presented by Mr. Chandler.
Second motion.
A motion by Councilmember Long and a second by Councilmember Williams. Council, if you would please cast your vote. Item 8 passes 4 votes to 0. Moving on to item 9, the public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing the voluntary annexation of 50.516 plus or minus acres of land legally described as being the remainder of a called 85-acre tract described as the second tract and the remainder of a called 63.72-acre tract described as the first tract conveyed to Curtis Hayes and Mary Hayes in volume 795, page 636, deed records of Bell County, Texas, also known as Bell County Tax Appraisal District parcel numbers 387-849 and 47122 and located along Little Mexico Road. Mr. Chandler.
Thank you, Mayor and Council. So obviously, this is another voluntary annexation. And so in the top left-hand corner, you can see where Little Mexico Road is located. And with the aerial, you can see that it's very close to the John Miller Airport. And once again, this is just over 50 acres. And includes compliance with Chapter 43 of the Texas State Statute. And I think what's most important to point out here is that this annexation is triggered by one of the 2008 development agreements that were extended a couple years ago as well. And so a plat is on hold for 10 acres, and these would be 2 5-acre lots awaiting this annexation to comply with the development agreement. And so 6 different property owners that the city has been working with. And as I mentioned before, the proposal is for 2 5-acre, presumably residential lots, and which should not be an issue in terms of proximity to the airport, as opposed to having, 100 different rooftops. We're talking about 2 at this point. And so a municipal services agreement was offered and accepted to the property owners and was presented to all the relevant departments, which were reviewed, and no issues were identified during that process. And so staff recommends approval of the voluntary annexation. And I know Ms. Hayes is here in case there were any questions for one of the property owners.
Thank you. Council, any questions for Mr. Chandler? This item is also subject to a public hearing. As you step to the podium and state your name and address for the record, or raise your hand on the platform. Nothing on the platform. No one in the audience. I will close the public hearing on item number 9. And council, if there's no further discussion, I will entertain a motion.
Make a motion to approve.
Second the motion.
I have a motion by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. We have a second by Councilmember Williams. Council, please cast your vote on item 9. Item 9 passes 4 votes to 0. Item 10 is the first reading in a public hearing to consider adopting an ordinance authorizing the following amendments to the Temple Unified Development Code as follows. Section 5.1 is to allow warehouse office use in the O2 in the Office 2 zoning district, subject to specific limitations. Section 8.1.5 is to clarify when a recorded plat is required for the issuance of certificates of occupancy and building permits for residential and commercial structures. And item C is section 8.2.1.D.4B, which is to amend the requirements for street projection locations within the city limits and the ETJ to create an exception when in proximity to railroad and TxDOT controlled roadways. Who wrote these? Okay. Mr. Chandler, take it away.
Okay.
I'm still recovering.
Yes, thank you, Mayor.
You bet.
Take a deep breath.
Lawyer.
So as the item description tells you, we've got some UDC cleanup, and starting with allowing warehouse office uses within an Office 2 zoning district. We were approached by Fikes Corporate with that question, that at their corporate headquarters, they wanted to put in warehouse office to the rear. And initially thought, well, surely it allows it, because that office warehouse is one of 2 uses listed under the office section of the UDC. Office 2 is the most intense office zoning district, but no dice. It was not allowed. So we worked with them to provide some limitations so that they're not allowed in all Office 2 districts. What we're looking at the screen here is that you follow the O2 column down, you'll see an L with limitations and the reference to what those limitations would be in terms of where would they be appropriate and under what conditions. And so looking at allowing them on community collectors for the thoroughfare plan or greater classification. So that'd be minor arterials, or freeways as well. And then also having a minimum of a 20-foot landscape buffer from any adjacent residential uses as well. So that's one. There are 3 cleanup items on here. This other one, something that has been brought to our attention with additional commercial development recently, that our code currently does not allow building permit to be issued when there's a plat associated with a development until that plat has been recorded. for a variety of reasons. Some of these larger single lot commercial developments need additional time between permit issuance to recordation to add different easements, et cetera. And ultimately, we have no issue with that and want to provide that additional flexibility. A little different for single family neighborhoods with hundreds of lots. You know, those addresses can get complicated, but for a single lot commercial or you know, several lot development, it's usually single lot. No issues with that. So bottom line is what you see on the screen here is that we've really just pulled residential buildings out of the mix so that they still would be required to have plat recordation before permits can be issued, but not for commercial or and basically the last line there says in such cases, no certificate of occupancy may be issued without recordation of the final plat. So we still provide that flexibility, but ultimately they can't occupy the building without that plat recordation. And then the last one, as you all know, projection of streets is an exception for subdivision plats that comes to council fairly frequently. And so while we were at it and looking at some code cleanup, thought we would clean this provision up as well to provide a little bit more flexibility and quite frankly, a closer match our practice and clarifying that the flexibility would include street projections, not every 1,000 feet, but on average. So if you've got a 3,000 foot frontage, you know, adjacent to undeveloped land, then you'd have 3 street projections, but you have limitations related to topography, railroads, intersections with state highways, et cetera. So we wanted to provide a little bit more flexibility and codify that. And then also in the ETJ, just to match Bell County's standard of every 1,500 feet. And then adding some discretion with parameters for me as the planning director, if there is are floodplains, if it's a TxDOT roadway or other condition, railroad presence there that that I would have some discretion based on that list to administratively approve those types of street projections rather than taking those to council. So that is essentially what we're looking at. And planning and zoning at their June 6th meeting recommended unanimous approval, 8-0. And available to answer any questions you might have.
Good. Thank you, sir. Council, any questions?
I do. Brian.
Yes, ma'am.
The last point, the street projections, was very logical. And it crosses a lot of other areas. It's cleanup.
Yes, ma'am.
The other 2 things are being done primarily for one applicant. Good. Don't misunderstand me. But are they going to cause hiccups when other types of applicants come in?
Very good question, because when we evaluate code amendments, it may start by a single request, but ultimately we want to evaluate comprehensively and see, is this something for a single user or is this something that's going to benefit the entire community? And so while Fikes, for example, approached us about the office warehouse, we think that this would obviously would apply to office 2 zoning districts on community collectors or arterials or the loop or the interstate. And so it would provide additional opportunities, especially now with the office warehouse being so limited in its availability and just the demand is sky high. So we think that would benefit the entire community. It just so happened that Fikes is the group that brought it to our attention that we had a hole that we thought we ought to fill in the code.
So just hypothetically,
Mhm.
very hypothetically.
Yes.
Let's say someone wanted to do an office warehouse on some of the buildings along 57th Street that are not in very good shape.
Mhm.
Somebody wanted to start something there. How would this apply there? Very hypothetically.
Sure. Well, I'd have to double check 57th. I don't believe 57th is a community collector or higher, but I would need to double check that. Assuming that it
Sure.
is, then smaller lots certainly wouldn't probably apply just because you have the 20-foot landscape buffer. Since
Right.
there are neighborhoods behind there, 20-foot landscape buffer would be required. And so, yes, that,
It's probably so hypothetical that it's meaningless.
but
I think
no,
we should-
so we can absolutely look at that between now and second reading and just
But-
make sure that, we don't have a huge number of O2 zoned properties within the community. And so be
And
helpful
somewhere
if
like
I
that, they couldn't
showed a
come in.
map of where that might apply.
And they couldn't come in and ask to be rezoned to O2.
Well, this would allow that.
Okay,
And so we're not proposing language that would eliminate the ability to rezone to O2 for that purpose. It's not just based on status quo necessarily. But keep in mind that Office 2 also allows, in the code, it's listed as any height allowed by law. So, Office 2 already allows a really significant amount of flexibility compared to other zoning districts. And so when we were looking at Fikes, for example, thought, well, it seemed odd that you couldn't have an office warehouse building at the rear of the property to support this headquarters, yet they could build a 10-story building at that location.
thank you.
Welcome.
Good. Thank you, sir. Council, anything else? This item is subject to a public hearing. Anyone wishing to speak, please step to the podium or raise your hand on the platform.
Alan Lytle, 504 Sale del Plata. Just a real quick question. If you all approve this tonight, does that then apply to anybody who comes in and files tomorrow? Or is it grandfathered and anybody that has an issue outstanding with this can come through and utilize these changes to the code? Does that make sense?
Yes, so really, this is first reading, so I'm just to clarify, obviously, after you're talking about after second reading, if this were adopted, then somebody who has existing Office 2 zoning could apply to add an office warehouse. Once again, though, those are the number of properties throughout town that are zoned Office 2. It's one of our less frequently used zoning districts. And so it would, allow for those that are zoned Office 2 and can meet all the other development standards to apply for that, or have that as an available use under Office 2 if someone were to request rezoning to that zoning designation.
No one on the platform? If there's no one else from the audience, then I'll close the public hearing on item 10 and entertain a motion.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve item 10, all three sections as presented by Mr. Chandler.
I'll second the motion.
I have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Williams. Council, please cast your vote. Item 10 passes four votes to 0. Item 11 is to consider adopting a resolution approving the final plat of Prairie Acres, a 10.07 plus or minus acre tract, 8 lot, 1 block residential subdivision with the developer requested exception to the UDC section 8.1.3 regarding fire hydrants in the extraterritorial jurisdiction of the city of Temple, Texas, near the southeast corner of State Highway 95 and Acre Spur. Mr. Chandler.
All right, thank you, Mayor and Council. And so here you can see the location in our southeastern corner of the extraterritorial jurisdiction. And so, of course, the aerial of the right, you can see that that is at the intersection of State Highway 95 and Acres Spur. And just give a little bit of extra context, our comprehensive plan does identify this area as future residential and neighborhood service. Once again, though, this is on the very edge of our extraterritorial jurisdiction. And so here is the plat that's before you, and it's did not stop at P&Z because of the exception related to fire suppression requirements. And so here you can see that there are 7 lots proposed along Acre Spur, and then a larger one, 6.25 acres that actually includes a flagpole providing access to Acre Spur. And because this is in our ETJ, this does require Bell County Commissioners Court approval. And Bell County has also required a total of 60 feet of right-of-way along Acre Spur. And so the applicant understands that and will dedicate the balance to get to 60. Drainage, no detention ponds or drainage features are needed based on the development plan. No sidewalks and no park fees are applicable for this. It's City of Temple water, and the applicant plans on extending the 6-inch water line. However, as we talked about in workshop, the pressure is not sufficient to be able to support fire hydrants. And so thus the exception is requested. On-site septic systems are proposed and certainly exceed the 0.5 acre minimum requirement for the county. The Development Review Committee considered this administratively complete and filed on May 31st. This is, just as a note, within the Temple Independent School District. And once again, Commissioners Court would have to approve this. So on to the exception. And so the language before you for staff recommendation has changed since since planning and zoning, what they saw versus what is before you today, just to provide additional clarity, because we cannot enforce fire suppression in our ETJ. And so we wanted to clarify. And so we worked with legal and the fire marshal's office, as well as with the Bell County Fire Marshal's office, to make sure we got this right. And so the recommendation would read that the developer requested exception regarding fire hydrants, provided the National Fire Protection Association 13D system as one option. Sorry, that's the exception, as long as there's a compliant water tank or equivalent system, and the third option is the sprinkler system that we talked about previously. And with that, all that said, providing the flexibility of meeting some form of acceptable fire suppression system that we cannot enforce, that Bell County cannot enforce. And I wanted to clarify that because I think I misspoke during the workshop. But what the Bell County Fire Marshal agreed to was to ensure installation, not that it was installed properly or that there would be any consequences if it were installed incorrectly, but at least just verify that it has been installed. So just wanted to be upfront in terms of what the limitations would be from our fire department, but also Bell County's. And so that was a complicated way to say, do you have any questions?
Council, anything for Mr. Chandler? Talked about this in workshop. Everybody okay? Being no further discussion, then I'll entertain a motion on item number 11.
Here, I'll make a motion on item 11 to approve the complexity of the approval with, as Mr. Chandler has presented.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Please cast your vote. Item 11 passes 4 votes to 0. Item 12 reads to consider adopting a resolution authorizing a construction contract with Emerson Construction Company, Inc. of Temple for the construction of an airport headquarters or fixed base operator building, an aircraft rescue firefighting building in the estimated amount of $6,690,103.60, as well as declare an official intent to reimburse the expenditures with the issuance of combination tax and revenue certificates of obligation, Series 2022. Ms. Matke.
Mayor and council, pleased to recommend to you this evening a recommendation to construct a new headquarters building for our airport. The construction will consist of the construction of the airport headquarters building, commonly referred to as a fixed base operator facility or an FBO facility. The construction will also include the construction of a significant sized covered ramp. Also an aircraft rescue firefighter building, or you'll hear that referred to as an ARF building. And also parking and landscaping. A rendering of the front of the main headquarters building. This is the front rendering of it. The backside or the ramp side is shown here. This actually shows an ambulance, but the ramp will actually be large enough for an aircraft can actually taxi under the canopy. The city manager did authorize the use of a competitive sealed proposal process for this solicitation, and we did receive 2 proposals on April 26th, both local vendors, Emerson Construction and Wright Builders. As stated in the competitive sealed proposal package, the proposals were evaluated by an 8-member evaluation committee based on price, 40%, the contractor's experience and reputation, 25%, the personnel that will be assigned to the project, 25%, along with the project approach at 10%. The 8-member evaluation committee readily came to the conclusion that we had 2 very good contractors that proposed on this project. So really, the recommendation from the committee really came down to the proposed price. That being Emerson's price of $6,727,603.60, and then Wright Builders of $7,212,000. This recommendation for the construction of this project aligns with 4 of the adopted plans we have: the strategic plan, our comprehensive plan, the airport master plan, along with the reinvestment zone master plan. Funding as approved in the consent agenda this evening is available in the financing plan, line item 508. It's expected that the construction of this will take 12 months. So it's the reinvestment zone boards, along with the staff recommendation to recommend award of the construction to Emerson Construction in the estimated amount of $6,690,103.60. It's broken down into civil component, that being the parking, sidewalks, and utilities. The actual FBO building itself, which is approximately 6,800 square feet. Landscaping, the actual ramp that an airplane can taxi under. 2 add alternates, that being the ARF building, along with fireplace. And then we did do some negotiations with Emerson that resulted in some reduction in price. It does not impact the quality of the building, coming down to a net recommendation of the $6,690,103.60. With us tonight, Airport Director Sean Parker is here. I believe I also see David Patrick, the design lead for KPA, is here. We'd be happy to answer any questions or take any comments.
Was the negotiated piece that you talked about, the $37,000 that was in the quote versus, or in the bid versus what we're approving?
That is correct.
Okay.
That is correct.
No impact on quality.
No impact on quality. It's a change in the sheathing from it was spec'd as dense or as plywood, and we're changing it to dense glass. And then also there's change, just really a clarification in insulation. It didn't have an impact at all. And then where we can use aluminum wiring instead of copper, that is another small component, the 5100.
Okay. Perfect. Thank you for that.
And we'll continue to evaluate things as we move along for opportunities, but those were the initial ones that we were able to negotiate up front.
Okay. Thank you.
Ms. Mackey, I had a quick question. I thought at some level we had, or a decision was made to remove the fireplace.
We actually expected, we did that as an ad alternate, expecting the price of that fireplace to be a lot more than that. So really, it's more of an aesthetic thing for our airport. Mr. Parker really liked the idea of having it in the airport, and for the cost as minimal as we see it being, that is why we're proceeding with the recommendation of the fireplace.
Yeah, I thought there were some other reasons besides cost not to include it, but thank you.
So the fireplace is in.
The fireplace is in.
Council, any questions for Ms. Matkey?
The landscaping pictures are lovely, naturalized. They're
Yes.
low maintenance, low water.
That is the plan.
Keep it that way.
And many thanks to Cubby for that. It'll be an outstanding front door to our community.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, I'll entertain a motion on item 12.
Move for adoption of item 12.
Second.
Have a motion by Councilmember Williams. We have a second by Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Council, please cast your vote. Item 12 passes 4-0. Moving on to item 13, it's consider adopting a resolution authorizing an economic development agreement with Blackland Capital, Inc. to construct or cause the construction of a multi-use development on approximately 60 acres of land consisting of retail, banking, restaurant, townhomes, offices, and apartments located west and east of Hilliard Road, north of West Adams, and south of Crossroads Park. Ms. Myers.
Thank you, Mayor. So this is a proposed economic development agreement. A little bit of background on the project. The agreement would be with Blackland Capital Incorporated. They are proposing a multi-use development on approximately 60 acres. And as you mentioned, Mayor, to include a mix of uses, including retail, banking, restaurants, townhomes, offices, and apartments. The proposed development is near Crossroads Park, south of Crossroads Park, and would occur on both the west and east sides of Hilliard Road. This is an overall site layout of kind of the future vision for the development. This would not necessarily all build out in the first phase that's included in the economic development agreement, but it gives you a general idea of what to expect the development layout to be. In the proposed agreement, we are recommending that Blackland Capital's obligations would be to invest not less than $50 million in real and personal property improvements, that they would commence construction of the project no later than 12 months from the effective date of the agreement, and complete construction of the project improvements no later than 30 months from the commencement of construction. Complete the construction of the Hilliard Road median cut and waterline infrastructure improvements. I've got waterline highlighted in blue because that's a little bit different than what the information I provided in your packet last week. As we continue to work on finalizing the agreement, we're also recommending some water infrastructure improvements to be completed as part of this project, as well as the median. The city's obligations would to be reimbursing the cost of constructing the median cut and water line infrastructure in a total not to exceed amount of $550,000 or the actual cost of construction of those improvements, whichever is less. I would be happy to answer any questions you may have.
Very good. Thank you. Council, any questions for Ms. Myers on this one? I think we're all pretty familiar with this development. Be okay? Very good. Then I will entertain a motion for approval on item 13.
Mayor, I'll make a motion to approve item 13, including the items highlighted in blue and staff recommendations.
Second.
We have a motion by Councilmember Long. We have a second by Councilmember Mayor Pro Tem Morales. Council, if you would, please cast your vote. Item 13 passes 4 votes to 0.
Mayor, if I could just add at this point on that last item.
Yes, ma'am.
We should thank our city manager for all the hard work she's done on that. Thank you very much. Yes.
Well, this should be a great project.
Yep.
Looking forward to seeing it.
I agree. Very good. It is now 6:33. Thank you all for attending tonight's meeting, and this meeting is adjourned.